Welcome to Truth Wanted. We search for proof of gods, ghosts, aliens, or any other questionable claims, but we haven't found any yet. Do you have the evidence we've been looking for? Well, then call us because the show is starting right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Truth Wanted. I am your host, Objectively Dan. This is the live call-in show that happens every single week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time, where we talk to people about what they believe and why. And if you'd like to call us, you can do that. We have open lines right now. It's 512-991-9242, or you can call through your computer at tiny.cc/call-TW. Truth Wanted is a product of the atheist community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And of course, every single week, I always have a special guest. This week is no different. It's Kelley Laughlin, everybody. Kelley, welcome back to the show.
You know what? I didn't feel special until you said it. So
you are special, Kelley. You are special. Now we should say we did have somebody else who was scheduled for today, but unfortunately, Kelley, they were having their power's been out like the whole day. So Kelley, of course, was so kind to step up tonight and be our guest tonight, and I'm so glad you did, Kelley, because people have been asking, people have been clamoring, when's the next deep dive? Okay. And I saved the deep dives for guests that we've had on before because I feel like I like introducing new people. But Kelley, you've been around the block. Okay. That means we get to have
without the big wheel.
Yeah. And we did our show in person together recently a few weeks ago too. That was really great. But we're going to do a deep dive today, folks. And it is going to be a big one. Okay. I've been going to get to him again. So we got one. I've had I've been cooking. Okay. I've been cooking. So let me cook and we'll get to it. But first, before we do that, you know how it's going. We have a question that we've been asking you guys every single week. It's our We Want the Truth segment, folks. And we are going to start that first. Last week, we asked you wrong answers only. What is the real reason for climate change? And I was excited for this one because I think it's a funny question. And here are your funny answers. We're going to read the top 3 from last week. Number 3 goes to iTheist, who says the real cause of climate change is people working out and heating up the earth with their body heat, which is really, really funny. Like, I like it's like a Black Mirror episode, except like, I don't know. It's like, first of all, America is one of the big polluters out there. And we would definitely not be the biggest one here because I feel like we have so many health problems, right? Like we wouldn't, there wouldn't be as many people working out as in other countries. Maybe that's not true. I don't know. But yeah, that's just a funny thought, right? Kelley's nodding his head. He agrees.
That is a funny thought.
Thank you for your comment. Thank you for your insightful commentary there, Kelley. Sorry, I was prompting you to speak, but that's okay.
Both my brain cells got stuck together for
all 2 of them, huh? You got to keep those things separate. I don't know what to do about that, but I appreciate you, Kelley. Thank you. Number 2, we're going to get to our next comment. We have a Brinstar Media who says, real reason for climate change, the thing mothers always yelled at us about. Too many people opening the front door in winter and letting all the heat out. And that's it. Brinstar Media's got it. By the way, what a great channel name, Brinstar. That's a Metroid thing. Okay. Y'all played that new Metroid remake? I want to play it. Looks really good. I've been playing the new Resident Evil. That's really fun. Anyway, video game talk. That's a new separate show that I'm going to start here at the ACA because that's relevant to the mission. Thoughts on that, Kelley? Did you get told that when you were a kid?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And air conditioning in the summertime too. My stepdad was real adamant about leaving that, not letting all that air conditioning out. And I always thought, isn't that the way to cool down the whole world? I'm 8 years old and thinking it was a great idea.
Okay, so, this is off topic. But speaking of things your parents used to say, okay, did your parents used to say when you were in the back seat of a car? I don't know, maybe cars didn't have this when you were a kid, but it was like, you got like lights in the front and lights in the back. And my parents would always say, you can't have the lights on while you're driving. That's illegal. And I believed that up until I could drive a car. I thought when I was first driving a car, you couldn't do that. And it's like, oh no, they just didn't want me to turn the lights on in the back seat. And they were just fucking with me. I mean, that's just, I don't know.
I actually thought that was illegal up until a couple of years ago. So
up to a couple of years ago. Okay, yeah.
yeah.
See, so that's just this pervasive myth that just parents have been telling kids. So that's really funny.
They just want you to fall asleep in the back seat is what they want.
I think that's what it is for sure. So we're gonna go ahead and go to our number one answer this week. We have Young Dud, who says the real cause of climate change, the murder of Harambe. Which is, bring back the Harambe memes. Those were so funny. I don't know why talking about that gorilla was like the funniest thing ever. It was really sad what happened, but like, I don't know. People said all of our problems started when Harambe died, and I agree. So yeah, you remember Harambe, Kelley?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah,
of course.
Oh yeah.
We should all remember Harambe. I mean, that was a whole, man, what a time.
Yeah, I still got 2 brain cells left to remember.
And one of them remembers Harambe. Yeah, that's what it's there for. Anyway, well, great. Thank you guys so much for your comments. It's really, really funny. I'm liking this segment that we're doing. So we're gonna give you the prompt for this week. I'll of course remind you at the end, but if you want to start cooking your answers now, we've got what's the best get out of going to church lie, which I think is such a great prompt. I want to see what you guys come up with. What's the best get out of going to church lie? Go ahead and comment on the video below, and you may get read on next week's segment. But before we continue, Kelley, what's the best getting out of church lie?
The dog ate my hymn book.
Dog ate my hymn book. I didn't see that coming. That's a good one, Kelley. You've been storing that one. Did the other brain cell have that? Because that was a good one, dude. The dog ate my hymn book. Damn, that was good. You caught me off guard with how good that was. Anyway,
I'm on a roll tonight.
You're on a roll, dude. That's great. I love that. No, I don't know. Like, what did I used to say? I don't know if I used to say anything. Honestly, I didn't like going to church as a kid, but when I was a teenager, I was very active churchgoer / youth grouper. Though I did used to say, I went to youth group, on a Wednesday, so it's okay if I didn't get to go to church on a Sunday, right? I fulfilled my weekly spiritual requirement. Right. I feel like there was kind of a thing there. It's like, oh, I missed church this week. I better go to the next one. Like that's a thing.
Go to hit the next one.
That is a thing. At least it was around me. So yeah, go ahead, folks. Give your answers below. We'd love to see what you guys got. And Kelley, it's time for a little segment that I call Dan's Deep Dive. Okay. Yay. So we're going to get right into it. Kelley, I want you to imagine, close your eyes for a second if you don't mind, Kelley. Close your eyes. Imagine, okay, you're driving down the highway and you're by the city and you see a big sign, a big billboard of a Chinese woman with a big sort of tutu. She's got like a big dress and it's advertising for a performance. What's that performance called, Kelley? What do you think? Boy. Do you know this?
No, I don't. I mean, I have some good ideas of what.
There's a Chinese woman with a dress, and it's got a teal background. Ringing any bells?
You know what? See, here's the thing. I live in a place where we don't have stuff like that.
Okay.
I live in a place where we have more trees than people.
Okay. So not including Kelley, because Kelley lives wherever Fred Flintstone lives or wherever, right?
I don't ever see billboards.
Kelley's out somewhere else. If you live in a major metropolitan city, chances are you've seen this billboard for a thing called Shen Yun. Okay. Shen Yun is advertised as a cultural performance, a traditional Chinese performing arts show. And what if I told you, Kelley, that this performing arts show is actually behind the scenes run by a new age Chinese cult?
Really?
Yes. Today, folks. We're talking about the Falun Gong today.
Oh, yes. Those guys.
The Falun Gong. Now, the Falun Gong is an interesting movement. I've mentioned them before on this show, but the Falun Gong is so deep. I really wanted to save it for one that we had a lot of time for, and because we got a lot more time today, we're going to talk about it. There's really 3 different parts to the Falun Gong. Because now we're going to talk about something else you see, Kelley. I know you must have some gas stations out there, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, we do have those.
You ever go into a gas station, you see they have some newspapers, out there. Okay, paper newspapers. You ever seen a newspaper called the Epoch Times?
No, not up
No.
here. But I know what the Epoch Times is.
Never heard of this. Okay, some of you guys may have heard of this before too. Epoch Times is a sort of almost notorious now, very right-wing newspaper that also has like anti-Chinese sentiment. That's basically like completely appeals to Republicans. Also, they have Epoch TV now, which is interesting, kind of their live service. Not only is the Epoch Times connected to Shen Yun, in fact, they advertise Shen Yun quite frequently, but they're also part of the same cult Falun Gong movement. In other words, all three of these things are connected. So you have this weird right-wing newspaper that publishes QAnon conspiracies, anti-vax conspiracies, and Trump election conspiracies. You have a Chinese cultural performing arts show that happens in major metropolitan areas like Los Angeles, New York City, and even here in Austin. And you have a Chinese neo-religious movement that's against the Chinese Communist Party, practicing ideas saying that communism and atheism and evolution are all evil ideas promoted by the Chinese communist government, and there may or may not be organ harvesting involved. I mean, this thing goes really, really, really deep, Kelly. So yeah, Falun Gong, folks, is what I decided I wanted to talk about today. I want to talk about the Falun Gong because people have talked about it before, but maybe people don't really realize sort of the weird interconnectedness that all of these movements bring. Shen Yun stuff is also really funny. At first, I was just going to talk about Shen Yun, but Falun Gong in particular, you have to understand before you can understand Shen Yun, and then also the Epoch Times consequently. So what is the Falun Gong? Okay, so the Falun Gong, again, it's a new religious movement founded by this guy named Li Hongzhi in China in the early 1990s. Now, of course, Falun Gong, like a lot of neo-religious movements, will claim that they have a lot of like ancient sources to it, and they do have some like Taoist inspired teachings, but I think this is the equivalent of like David Koresh calling himself like a Christian. Okay, like yes, like obviously he's using like the Bible and stuff, but like David Koresh's Christianity is not what like most Christians believe, and like simultaneously I would think that most Taoists like don't think what the Falun Gong think, right? I think that's fair enough to say. So the Falun Gong has a wide, like a wide reach of practitioners. There's several million of them in the world. One number I saw says about 7 million. Another says up to 40 million. So there's kind of some varying numbers. Part of the reason why it's hard to kind of count is because the Falun Gong is an extremely, extremely anti-communist sort of religious movement. If you're familiar with the Communist Party and its, kind of how it operates in China, they're not a big fan of religion for the most part. You'll see even Christians talk about, the persecution that happens to folks that try to do evangelism stuff there because of what happens. They can't get locked up. They can't get in prison because if you're against the party, that does happen. And so like, I don't want to downplay this element of it, right? Okay, I do believe, based on the most objective information I could find, the Falun Gong is an oppressed group that's in China. That doesn't mean they don't believe in some wacky shit. There's a lot of people that are oppressed in China that believe in some wacky shit. And the Falun Gong is no exception. But it should be noted that the Falun Gong is important for its anti-communist China sentiment. That's like a very core part of its beliefs, right? So they're really... I think that's an appeal for a lot of people. It's not just like the religious elements. It is also kind of this sort of independent movement, right? So again, it really just kind of started in the 1990s, but they claim that it's kind of a little bit more ancient. What do they actually believe? That's what I want to get started with, because honestly, to me, this is like maybe the least interesting part, or maybe the more boring part, because like it's just kind of a mix of different Eastern ideas that aren't really coherent. And I'm not going to try to convince you that any of it's kind of legit, because it's like not. Okay, like part of it is just like, oh, you have to live by truthfulness. Okay, that's like one of their core principles. You have to live, in compassion and forbearance are these other terms. These are kind of these principles that you have to use to kind of, understand the fundamental nature of the cosmos.
Well, there we go.
The quote, it says the foundational text, which was published in 1995. This is Long Hongzhi the foundation of Texas called Swan Falun. And he writes, it doesn't matter how mankind's moral standard changes, the nature of the cosmos doesn't change, and is the only standard for determining who's good and who's bad. So to be a cultivator, you have to take the nature of the cosmos as your guide for improving yourself. How do you understand the nature of the cosmos? Of course, we got to follow Falun Gong. I mean, that's how you do it, right?
Yep, that's the major step, right? That's what that's what every religious or spiritual movement promises, that you're going to get all the answers, right?
Right.
You just have to take one more step and you'll get there.
Yeah. So there are these kind of like, obviously spiritual sort of, I don't know, deepities that are attached to this, like a lot of Eastern religions. Like, I think part of the reason why shows like ours don't cover Eastern religions as much is because, I don't know, there's not as much to it in the same way that we get with Christianity and like Islam. Like, there's just like these weird foundational differences that emphasize things differently and therefore impact people culturally differently. So like, there's obviously a lot of cultural context here that I'm never going to fully understand, but the gist of it is you got to like understand some of the fundamentals of Taoism, and some of the fundamentals of the universe will be revealed to you. Okay. Now there's another part of the Falun Gong, and that is exercises. Okay. So in addition to the philosophy here, there is this sort of cultivation practice. You have to facilitate the free flow of energy through the body and open up the meridians. I had quotes up like Dr. Evil the entire time I was doing that, listeners at home, because I don't know what the fuck that means, free flow of energy through the body, or what the meridians are, but there's 5 different stances that you're supposed to do to sort of do this. And Kelley, I thought it'd be fun if we did some of these stances together. Would you like to do some stances with me?
Sure.
Okay. All right. We're going to do some stances live on the air. Folks listening at home, sorry, but I will try to describe the motions that we're doing here. Okay. So the first one is the Falun heavenly circulation. Okay. The Falun heavenly circulation. And you got to hold your stuff up like this. Go ahead
like
and do this for me,
ball.
like a chi ball. Yeah. So we kind of got our hands interlocked here. You're supposed to be standing for all of these. Just pretend, like viewers at home, we're standing for, our Falun Gong exercises. Now keep doing that, Kelley. You're going to be my model. Okay. While I read out the next one here. Now the next one here, we have to do the Buddha showing 1,000 hands, which is another important one. You kind of do this. You almost dab on them is how I describe it. You kind of have your hand out here. Yep. And Kelley's doing the whole proper motions here. Kelley's a Falun Gong master. He's really, look at him. Look, yeah, get that camera pan on him because he's doing it great. So this is the second exercise is you're supposed to involve holding a four static poses, which represent holding a wheel for an extended period of time. It's supposed to enhance wisdom, increase strength, and raise a person's level and strengthens divine powers. Okay, so tell me if you're feeling any of that while you're doing this for me, okay?
No, I'm just feeling a little bit less stiff.
Okay, all right. Well, that's good. That's something at least. Okay, so the next one, we have to strengthen our divine powers. Okay, so we're going to kind of put one hand out in front and another hand out here like this. And there's this little finger motion to it. Here, I'm trying to get this on camera. This is really hard to do in the space allotted. But we're strengthening our divine powers here. This is, man, we should do like an exercise thing at home. We should release like a VHS tape. And this is like the Truth Wanted exercise, like 80s VHS tape, except we're doing Falun Gong stuff. I really like that. So that's strengthening our divine powers. Now we're going to Falun standing stance, which is you're kind of doing this motion right here. You're putting your hands.
Oh, you got to show Dan. There
you're
we
putting
go.
your hands above your head, and you're kind of saying, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck am I doing these motions for? Because this is kind of good and all over the place. You don't really know what's happening here. And then the last one I have here, this is the penetrating the 2 cosmic extremes, which my immediate thought is saying that's what she said. But this one is also interesting because I don't even think I can get it on camera. You have to stick one hand all the way down and another one just all the way up like this. And we're penetrating something. I don't know if it's cosmic extremes, but I can feel it in my shoulder here. So yeah. So you're doing it. So you're already engaging in that spiritual practice there, Kelley. Do you feel the divine energy flowing
Not
through
really.
you? No?
I used to do Qigong when I was younger, so I'm feeling, I kind of like, again, I feel like I'm a little bit less stiff. The stretching is definitely helping my old body, but
That's good.
I don't feel anything divine out of it. No.
Okay, well, I'm really
maybe if I stand here and act like an antenna for a while, maybe the divineness will suck into me.
I hope so. That's good. That's good that you got something out of it, at least. That's what I would hope for. So I want to continue talking about the Falun Gong and talking about some of their interesting beliefs. Okay. Obviously there's like kind of that morality stuff to it. They also have like very traditional ideas, unfortunately, about sexual relations outside of marriage, right? So only monogamous heterosexual marriages are allowed. This is from the Wikipedia article, quote, Li Hongzhi taught that homosexuality makes one, quote, unworthy of being human, creates bad karma, and is comparable to organized crime. He also taught that disgusting homosexuality shows the dirty, abnormal psychology of the gay who has lost his ability of reasoning. Li additionally stated in a 1998 speech in Switzerland that the gods' first target of annihilation would be homosexuals. Although gay, lesbian, and bisexual people may practice Falun Gong, founder Li stated that they must give up the bad conduct of all same-sex sexual activity. So that's not great. Okay, that's a minus. That's a mark off the grade there for Falun Gong. It's kind of some fun exercises and stuff, and some good truth and compassion. I can get down for that. Not so great on annihilating the homosexuals. That's not my favorite part. Especially comparing them to organized crime, which I think is hilarious. I don't know what that they're doing gay crimes together in an organized way. I don't know. What do you think, Kelly?
The Yakuza?
The Yakuza. First of all, the Yakuza is Japanese, not Chinese. Okay, Kelly.
I know.
So a little bit of cultural cross-contamination there, but the Yakuza is now, if I am going to start a gay mafia, I will call it the Yakuza.
I couldn't think of anything to go with my Gayfia didn't work. That's why I went to Yakuza.
Oh my god. Anyway, so not too fond of homosexuals, the Falun Gong, right? Not really interested in that. And there's also like, they talk about the Dharma, they talk about reincarnation a bit. So again, there's these other kind of Buddhist teachings that go into it, like a lot of like neo-religious movements, right? It's kind of a mix of a lot of different things, but unfortunately it doesn't get any progressive elements out of that. It's all kind of some traditional stuff. So that's like kind of the beliefs. Again, I'm skimming this here a bit because I want to talk about some of the other stuff. Now, it should be noted that the Falun Gong, again, in China, is I would consider, and other groups have considered, an oppressed group. In fact, the U.S. Congress has even pointed out that what has been done to the Falun Gong is deplorable and should not be allowed. So here's a number that I have here. Again, this was actually the bigger number that I had for prior to July 1999. Official estimates place the number of Falun Gong practitioners at 70 million nationwide. In China. Okay, so that's actually a bigger number than what I pulled earlier. So that's actually rivaling membership in the Communist Party. But the Chinese government says it's between 2 and 3 million. So of course, there's different numbers there, though some publications maintain an estimate of 40 million. Okay, so in that time period, there has been multiple instances of multiple accusations that the Chinese government has kidnapped particular members of the Falun Gong. There's a lot of rumors that you may have heard. In fact, we were talking a little bit about this, Kelly, about organ harvesting, specifically an organ harvesting advocacy group that kind of makes aware some of the issues in there, have specifically stated that the Falun Gong has been victims of some of these organ harvesting. Sometimes when they do this, they take up to 3 organs at a time, is what's been reported. And has sold this on the market. Now, again, a lot of this is kind of sketchy to kind of talk about because every organization that we talk about that comes out of China, it's really, really hard to verify because we just don't have the same sorts of access that we do here. But there's definitely oppression that happens with these groups. Thousands of them have definitely been imprisoned for speaking out against the government. And there is an interest in the government to kind of, hold this group down because they are so critical of the Communist Party. So it's a bit different from other groups, again, because it's very politically involved, like very, very super politically motivated. It's not just, oh, we're just going to have our beliefs and kind of be over here to the side. There's a lot of active protest against communism in particular. So what do you think, Kelley? Kind of an interesting group so far, huh?
Yeah, it is a pretty interesting group. And I know that at one point they were actually recognized by the government of China, but when they started speaking out against it just a couple of years later, they became outlawed. And when you mentioned the organ harvesting, I just want to point out it's not just Falun Gong members. This is something that we know or that we believe is happening in Chinese prisons amongst many different prisoners of all types. So, and it's something that really needs to be brought up to people's attention, and hopefully we can do something about stopping it at some point in the future.
New York Times has a number here, and their number is at least 2,000 specifically from Falun Gong members since, and that was in 2009. So, you know,
that's missing.
That was in 2009. That's that is the number that they have claimed. That have been killed as a result of that. But another one, Amnesty International says at least 100 Falun Gong practitioners actually died in custody. And a journalist named Ethan Gutman found 65,000 Falun Gong were killed for their organs from 2000 to 2008, based on interviews that he did. But there's other people who say, you know, the sources of this are disputed. Again, like it's really hard to kind of verify a lot of this stuff. There's some also like really gross pictures that I don't encourage you to look up, but there's stuff going on. Okay. Whatever it is, there's definitely, I would say, I'm confident in saying human rights abuses are happening.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, that being said, that doesn't mean the Falun Gong doesn't do awful, crazy shit too. And we'll get to that when we talk about the Epoch Times. But first, we're going to take a detour because this is going pretty long here, and I want to make sure we have time for everything. But we need to talk about the other two things that I think are important to talk about, which is Shen Yun and the Epoch Times. Now, Shen Yun, for those of you, again, who may have seen this before, if you live in America, you've seen these billboards and you wondered, what's that Chinese cultural show all about? You see the advertisements for it everywhere. Again, it is a performing arts organization that, while not exclusively owned, technically is owned by the Falun Gong, right? Well, technically they have their own independent nonprofit that it's owned by, but the members are Falun Gong. Okay, so like they basically run it. Again, there's these kinds of legal loopholes that happen because they can't claim they're owned by the Falun Gong, because then that would be a religious organization, and then you can't church and state stuff, right? Like then they'd it gets really messy. But yeah, they are a nonprofit. Officially, that kind of does these reports. And one of the things that got me interested, Kelley, in the Falun Gong specifically, was this 2019 article, this New Yorker article that I'm going to read parts of it to you now, written by Gia Tolentino, who writes this article called "Stepping into the Uncanny, Unsettling World of Shen Yun." It is a great article. I don't always tell you, go read the sources I find for this stuff, but you should read this one. You should read this one from beginning to end, because it is amazing. Basically, Gia goes into this show and kind of describes what she sees. And I have a great quote for you here, Kelley. So here's her sitting kind of in the audience here, and describing what she's seeing. Okay. She says, "I felt my forehead. The dances continued, sleeves swirling, skirts rippling. A man came on stage to sing a song in Chinese, which was translated on the screen behind him. We followed Dafa, the great way," he began, singing about a creator who saved mankind and made the world anew. "Atheism and evolution are deadly ideas. Modern trends destroy what makes us human," he sang. At the end of the song, the row of older white people sitting behind me clapped fervently. In the final dance number, a group of Falun Dafa members who wore blue and yellow and clutched books of religious teachings battled for space in a public square with corrupt youth. Their corruption was evident because they were wearing black, looking at their cell phones, and in the case of two men, holding hands. Chairman Mao appeared, and the sky turned black. The city in the digital backdrop was obliterated by an earthquake, then finished off by a communist tsunami. A red hammer and sickle glowed in the center of the wave. Dazed, I rubbed my eyes and saw a huge bearded face disappearing in the water. "Was that?" I said to my brother, wondering if I needed to go to the hospital. Karl Marx, he said. Yeah, I think that was a tsunami with the face of Karl Marx. It's just awesome, which is just, I mean, I kind of want to see that show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of do now too. Yeah, I'm willing to drive 4 hours to a city to see it now after that.
Yeah. By the way, Falun Dafa, that's the actual sort of teachings of the Falun Gong. That's like the principles and the meditations and stuff is what that is. But yeah, so like that's what you expect when you come to these shows. They kind of advertise themselves as these traditional Chinese sort of performances. By the way, they've also claimed that China is the origin for things like ballet and gymnastics, which is not true. Those don't come from China, but like they kind of make these big, broad, wide-reaching claims to kind of get this audience and to basically trick people into thinking that, hey, this is a cultural engagement that you should get in, when really it's this show that promotes the teaching of this cult. And that's been going on for decades. Shen Yun's been doing shows since the 2000s, and it has still been doing shows all around the place. So yeah, if you've ever seen those billboards, that's what you're missing out on. So you've never seen them, Kelley? Because I feel like they're kind of everywhere.
No, well, you know what? The closest city to me is like 2.5 hours away, and it's Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Okay.
So just to give you an idea of how
I don't know if Shen Yun is doing any stuff in Green Bay. I mean, they could be, but
exactly.
Imagine that's not the target demo. Okay, well, everyone besides Kelley, I think you've seen this stuff. Now, last thing I'm going to talk about, because we've been talking for a while, but again, this is such a broad and expansive topic, is we're going to talk about the Epoch Times. Now, I know you've seen the Epoch Times, Kelley.
Yes, I have.
What describe the Epoch Times for me?
Very right wing.
Yeah.
Very pro Trump.
Sure.
Very pro MAGA. Promoting right wing conspiracy theories. Right. And it's a well, to put it bluntly, it's a right wing shit show.
It is a lot. There is a lot of stuff there that you basically hit the nail on the head for right now. Now, again, I don't want to get too political here. I try to say we don't get political, but then we end up getting political on this show. Here's the thing: you can have whatever political beliefs you want. There is verifiable incorrect information that this publication is promoting, and that's what I'm interested in. Okay, right? Like this publication right now, by the way, 7th largest account on Gab, the right-wing social media site, which is hilarious. Epoch Times has a very, very big, wide reach, and as you mentioned, was a huge proponent for Donald Trump back in the day, especially when he was running. And as far as we know, has no official ties to like the Trump campaign or anything, just like really likes him, which is really interesting. And is this newspaper that, again, isn't officially owned by Falun Gong, but like kind of is actually, just like their chairman has made a statement saying, oh, we're not Falun Gong, but independent researchers have kind of looked in and said, yeah, they do definitely have ties. There's also been allegations that Falun Gong members that work for this newspaper do the editorial work and the writing work and do not get paid for a lot of this. And so this isn't like, again, like some random business. This is like, so you do work for a newspaper, you get paid. Like the Epoch Times is huge. They have enough supporters to actually have their own like live TV app that you can watch stuff off of. You can pay a subscription for. This isn't some, YouTube blogger source. Like they have money. They shouldn't pay people that do work for them. But anyway, this is the Epoch Times. They've talked a lot about, again, Trump, and they've also been very, of course, critical of the Communist Party. When COVID was first coming out, they called it the CCP virus in some of their publications. And they have blasted the legitimacy of PCR tests, and have also talked a lot about vaccination injuries as well. They have talked about other kinds of conspiracies as well. They've talked about election conspiracies. They talked about how Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton and Obama are part of the same sort of shadow government organization, which is basically QAnon. And in fact, they've actually directly talked about QAnon. And it basically said QAnon is someone you should follow. So there's a lot of stuff here with the Epoch Times. And again, this is a newspaper you can just like buy at your local gas station. I've seen them here in Austin. Like it's very widely publicated or very widely distributed, publicized.
They have a pretty slick website too.
Yeah. You go to their website and you would never think first glance, oh, well, this is obviously run by a secret Chinese cult. Like, no, it looks like, I don't know, it looks like a copy of Fox News. Like, it's just like a regular website. Of course, if you go to their website, you can also see their little Shen Yun section. They always have a fluff piece about Shen Yun and will report what Shen Yun is doing. So very, very interesting. Basically, their kind of strategy is, hey, Republicans, we're afraid of China too. And here's why you should be even more afraid of China. But you should know that, there's communist China here, and then there's us guys, so there's like this weird agenda with this paper. And the weird thing is, of course, again, who actually owns this paper, where the money actually goes to is very obfuscated. There's a lot of shell companies that it kind of goes through between Shen Yun, between Epoch Times, and between members of the Falun Gong themselves. It still kind of is a mystery. There's a lot of people that have tried to sort of break down what the exact business relationship is between all of these entities and exactly how much money they make from all this. But as of right now, it's kind of unclear. There's just a lot of speculation. So in a nutshell, Kelley, that's kind of the Falun Gong. It is a neo-religious movement in China that also publishes one of the biggest right-wing newspapers in the country, and also has a weird ballet performing arts show gymnastics thing that says, gay people are bad, and Karl Marx has a tsunami. Anyway, questions.
So religious, political, and cultural. They're going to catch you one way or another, right?
Yeah, it's weird. It's super weird. And I know I'm talking a lot about this thing because there's a lot to it. I mean, I'm really scratching the surface of some of the great quotes and relationships you can find with this and like other kinds of weird right-wing talking points as well. Like they've just been promoting a lot of the shit that you've been hearing and have probably, I mean, who knows what their impact is on politics in this country, right? All because some guy in the 90s was like, hey, gay people are going to get annihilated because they didn't do the right meditation exercises. I don't know. Very weird stuff. So that I'm going to end it right there because we've been talking for a while, but that's my deep dive today, Kelley. I told you it was going to be a big one.
No, that was great. That was awesome.
There you go.
I enjoyed it.
I'm glad. Final thoughts on Falun Gong before we move on.
Hopefully more people will learn about them because of what you just did.
Yeah.
And spread the word around some more, and we can educate a larger amount of people as to what's going on here with these people.
I hope so. And
hopefully keep one of our friends away from going to their shows.
Yeah. So. But low key though, I kind of want to go. Like I really do. Listen, Kelley, if you were here right now and like there was a show and somebody invited us, I would go. Straight up, I would go. I want to see it. I know it's wrong. I know I'm supporting a cult.
I'll make a deal with you. Next time I'm in Austin, if we can go see one, we'll go.
I know. It's like, oh God.
I'll buy the tickets.
Oh man, I don't know, man. I don't know. This thing, I don't think all Falun Gong members are bad or anything like that. And obviously, I do believe they've experienced legitimate oppression in places like China. But like here in America, it seems like it's all business, baby. Like I don't know, they're raking in something. I mean, it takes a lot of money to do a show like that. So
they figured out American capitalism real quick. Huh?
They really did.
Yeah,
they really did. Weird organization that I've only really scratched the surface of. But that's going to be it for the deep dive, folks. Let me know below what you liked, what you didn't like about my deep dive. It's been a minute since I've done one. Glad I got to do it today. But this is a call-in show, so we should definitely get to some calls, and we're going to get to that in just a second. But before we do, I want to give a shout out to the patron of the week, because every single week I always give a shout out to someone on Patreon. I want to, of course, thank everybody who donates on the Patreon. You guys rock, but we always give a special shout out every week. This week's patron of the week is going to be on the screen. It's Allie K. Thank you so much, Allie K, for donating. And of course, thank you to everyone who donates. That's patreon.com/truthwanted. And you should go check that out if you want to support the show. Another thing, of course, if you want to support the show and you're watching this right now, you can become a member. And if you do that, you can do that for as little as 99 cents a month. your name gets highlighted in the chat, and you can potentially be immune to chat timeouts if that's a thing still. But yeah, so
and you get to be one of the cool kids.
You get to be one of the cool kids, and isn't that what you always wanted to be? I mean, come on, let's be real. You get to do some meditation exercises with me. I should do a Patreon exclusive. That should be a Patreon exclusive, is us releasing our 80s VHS exercise tape / Falun Gong, exercise thing. I would like that. That we gotta think about this. But that's for a different time. Kelley, you ready to talk to some people?
I'm ready. I am big ready.
Okay. We have some interesting calls here. Interesting. I think we should talk to T. I think, is this T calling in from Missouri?
Yeah.
T?
How you guys doing?
Good. Hi, T. You're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Oh, I wanted to talk about sentientism versus humanism, and why I think sentientism might be a better moral structure to go by. And I have a couple of thought experiments we could go through. We could start with one, and maybe if we have time, get to another one.
Yeah. So before you start with that, just so we can explain to the audience, humanism, broadly speaking, secular humanism is kind of this idea of promoting human flourishing, right? It's kind of meant different things to different people. It's kind of notoriously not as well defined, but broadly speaking, secular humanism in particular promotes religious freedom, usually promotes scientific values. And again, human flourishing is kind of the end goal, whereas sentientism kind of goes a bit further. It does all of those things with the added caveat that it also tries to eliminate speciesism, is how I define it. I mean, it tries to basically invoke moral status amongst other living creatures like animals, and it also considers potential living life as well, such as extraterrestrials or even advanced AI that we might consider having moral status. So that's kind of the difference between the two, just so we're laying the groundwork, right?
Yeah, and I find it kind of funny that we have these conversations about ethics when we get sentient AI, but it seems like we're willing to grant sentient AI ethics that we aren't willing to grant sentient intelligence. It's like, why are we having this conversation when we haven't settled this other part? But to get to kind of the thought experiment, so take a time machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to go back in time, but one of the caveats here is, as you go back in time, you keep your morals, but you lose your scientific understanding to that of the time you go back to. So say you go back 2,000 years, you can have the same sentient moralism, but if you were to approach it from a humanist perspective, then you might think that your tribe is humans and everyone outside of your tribe, these aren't humans, just because we haven't made that scientific leap yet, So I feel like in that regard, sentientism gets us to a better answer more of the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I'm the biased one in this conversation because I also use the identifier as a sentientist for myself. It is something that I picked up in the last 2 years. That's not to say that a secular humanism, obviously I'm part of the ACA. One of the mission's statements is to promote secular humanism. I think it's a great idea. I just think sentientism to me does go that one step further, right? It does kind of answer this question. Okay, what about non-human beings? How do we figure that? Because the truth is, we all have standards. Most of us don't even consciously realize it. If you have a dog or a cat at home, you have standards for their quality of life. If you think that there's bad ways of treating it and good ways of treating it, then you do have standards, whether they're well thought out or not, whether they're culturally imbued, whether they're, something else, whatever, but you do have standards. So exploring that relationship is something I'm interested in. And you're right. I agree. We're talking about future AI stuff right now. AI is really hot, but we do have a relationship with other animals right now that, in my opinion, of course, we constantly violate. That is my interpretation. Kelley, what do you think so far?
I'm really interested in what sentience is, and I'm not trying to be on the other side of the coin, but
I get you.
I think we really need to define it, maybe to give some of the other people listening a better idea of what we're talking about. And I also have to wonder, when we like if you look up the dictionary definition of sentience, it's the ability to have emotions, basically. And I wonder if sometimes we don't project our human emotions on the behavior of animals when that's not what's happening with the animals.
Yeah.
So that's the only questions I had, is that how do we know we're not doing that? And just what exactly is sentience?
No, that's fair. I mean,
define it for everyone.
In my opinion too, and T, you should chime in on this. I think this is, I've had conversations with other folks. I'm actually in like a sentientist Facebook group, right, where I've seen other people talk about this. And this is my biggest problem with the label. First, because I think every philosophical label has problems, right? Humanism has problems, just as, you know, and all these kind of labels, because the problem is all, like many things, comes down to definability. What exactly do we mean by sentientism? There's been different proposals of it, but to me, this idea of not even having to be conscious, but having an ability to suffer and also having an understanding of self is what matters when it comes to conversations about ethics. So, for example, like if we're talking about mammals, right? Like most mammals on Earth have a nervous system and have a system that allows them to feel pain, right? Like the systems that we have to feel pain aren't like brand new, evolutionarily speaking. They're very similar to what you see in pigs, monkeys, apes, whatever. So like I just by that, I can understand that there's at least the same sort of impulses. Maybe they don't have trauma in the same way that we do, for example. Maybe there's other complex forms of suffering, but like that does inform my ability to sort of evaluate their sentience. In other words, their interaction with themselves. Because it's also another thing to suffer not even realizing you're suffering too, right? That's also an interesting thing. But like, the systems are there. Anyway, T, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Where I come from, you know, like I put mouse traps out in my home and kill mice still, like, because I have to take care of myself, and I don't have a better way to do that. You know, that's the best way I could do. If I had a better way and I just decide to put out mouse traps, then I'm a dick. You know, like there's no reason to do that. But so like, and as far as suffering and the ability to suffer, I do think there are degrees. I think that, you know, a dolphin, for example, can suffer more than a cricket, right? That's just, you know, I believe its ability to experience that suffering and understand how that suffering affects it. In fact, a few months ago, there was a call about how animals don't self-harm. And if you look into the Eli Lilly dolphin experiments, the dolphin in that experiment went down to the bottom of its tank and stopped breathing.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Experiment because of its depression.
Yes. So, now that is a speculated reason, right? Again, this is one. I want to point this out. This is a real study that happened to you. Yeah. This is a real study that happened. This is a trainer that worked with a dolphin for many, many years. And this dolphin allegedly drowned itself because it didn't get to see this trainer anymore and was moved to a new facility that it didn't like. The speculation is that this happened. Of course, we can't read animals' minds, but it is very interesting to consider, right?
I don't think it was so much that it was separated from that trainer as much as the environment that it was in. The facility that
it was moved to a new facility.
It was a really, really bad facility. But that animal was in distress, and it reacted in part to that distress, regardless of if it was knowing that it was doing that because of that, or if that was just the result of us stressing that animal out.
Yeah, I agree. So, it was an act of distress.
And
but
so like I say, I think there's like a tier that you kind of got to apply. I mean, I still put human first.
Yeah.
But like for say example, insulin, right? We derive insulin from animals. Say we had a way to make synthetic insulin, but people were like, oh, but if I use real insulin, the food tastes better.
Right.
Well, if you don't need real insulin and the food to taste better for you to eat, and you're causing an animal to suffer, then what is the point other than for your joy? For me, suffering is necessary for suffering. Absent of joy is not necessary for suffering. So, like, if I'm
that's kind of the negative consequentialist worldview. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's really where I come from it. But that's pretty much all I had.
No, I appreciate that. I want to chime in real quick and I also want to make sure Kelley is engaged in this conversation.
No,
too.
that's I've had a few thoughts, but
yeah, go ahead, Kelley.
We talk about, you were just talking about causing suffering to another animal for your own enjoyment.
Yeah.
Where do we draw the line on that? That's what what I started wondering about. Like you were talking about a cricket feeling harm. Does it?
Yeah.
Do we know that? And is there some kind of arbitrary line we can make between the evolutionary ladder where we say the animals on one side of this line aren't sentient and the animals on the other are? And how do we know, and I'm just going to throw a monkey into the works here. How do we know that plants don't have a type of sentience that we don't fully understand yet? Because I think they do. I really honestly believe that. I have no way to prove that. I just know that some of the things that plants do seem pretty intelligent.
Okay.
Like spreading antibodies from one end of a grove to another end of a grove. Right?
I have a lot of thoughts, but I want T to respond first. T, go ahead.
How I approach this is very simple. Right now, we don't know plants suffer, right? Tomorrow, if they discover we do, and there's a way for us to change our behavior so they don't, we should. It's that simple. As soon as we can recognize that something is suffering from our actions, we should alter our actions, if possible, to not allow that thing to suffer. Now, that might mean that for the next 2,000 years, we've smashed rocks and are just causing them all kinds of pain. And then 2,000 years from now, we're like, oh my God, we've been torturing these rocks this whole time. But I think we do. I mean, it's kind of like from the veil of ignorance, right? I approach, like I was born in America. I have all these resources to me. I didn't do anything to deserve that. Evolutionary wise, I'm in the same boat. I got to this point evolutionarily by no result of my own, and I apply the veil of ignorance. I'm no more entitled to not suffer than anything else.
Yeah. I think I would agree with you there, T. Like, I've heard the veil of ignorance argument being used for a pro-sentientist position, and I think it's applicable here. Again, I'm the biased one in this conversation here because I've adopted that label for myself because, again, while we may not have an exact tiered system as Kelley is interested in of what counts and what doesn't, but just because, I mean, the heap fallacy is still a thing, right? Just because that we don't have that exact sort of tier of knowledge doesn't mean that we can't recognize not only intuitive differences, but also just very physical and very real differences. Like Kelley, I can't describe to you the exact developmental differences between a child and an adult. I just can't. I don't have the knowledge of the brain or the body to do that. But like, you've lived a long enough life to know the difference between how a kid acts and how an adult acts. I mean, like, you've seen from that experience, you've seen from other studies that people have done between children and adults, some of those differences. So we do have some knowledge, and based on that knowledge, we do change the way we act towards children that we do towards adults, whether it comes from disciplinary measures or teaching otherwise, right? So with that knowledge in mind, I think we can look at other animals, who,
I agree to an extent. And part of my agreement is that we can do that with children. Yeah. But we were once children, so we can understand, right? And we've never been a cricket. We've never been a dog. We've never been a rotifer, right? So we can't really fully understand how sentient they are, or if in fact they are even.
Kelley, let's think about this. I've never been you.
No.
So how do I know you're sentient? I've been a human, but I've never been you. How do I know you're sentient? How do I know you're not a human? Okay, so you're a human. What does that mean? You have physical systems that resemble mine.
Here,
right?
let me answer it in this way. Have you ever met a human being who wasn't sentient?
Yeah, I mean, I could say so. Yeah, there's definitely people who.
In a figurative sense or a
no, absolutely sense? No. There's definitely people who are born who lack a capacity.
I'll agree with you. With you. There are some people that aren't capable of it.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. Who
but those people wouldn't be having this conversation.
No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't.
So I think I'm demonstrating my sentience by having this conversation.
I think so. But you can also, I mean, I'm not going to go into my spiel about Coke with a gorilla. Everybody knows how I feel about Coke with a gorilla. But like, we can look at apes, for example, and we can see there's clear communication between apes, right?
Mhm.
I mean, there is communication between them. There is communication. I mean, you can communicate with your dog. Your dog can understand things. It's on a very literal sense, right? But there's things happening there. I don't have a direct experience of what it means to be a dog. What's that? It's like that famous philosophy essay. I don't know what it's
Right,
like to be a
right.
bat, but I do know they have systems, and their systems are similar to mine. And
Mike,
based on those
I
systems,
pose,
I can make educated judgments on what's happening there. I know, for example, a bat has an eye and a dog has an eye, and I know they can see things because I know how an eye works. So I know these other systems, these ones that feel pain. I know that there has to be some function there. T wants to speak. Go ahead.
okay, so I got another thought experiment real quick. So if
Okay,
you were to
and then we got to wrap things
come
up. But
across,
thank you.
okay, say we come across an island that has new hominid species that we never discovered on it. They have their own language, it appears. They appear to be communicating, but we have no way to decipher their language or talk to them. We run their DNA, we find out it's not human, but they're very attractive and they taste like candy. Should we eat and exploit these hominid creatures, even though they seem to be just as intelligent as us, just as communicative as us, and just say, well, we can't prove it yet? Or should we err on the side of caution and say, hey, they appear to be like us, capable of suffering, all these things? I think the safer route to go is not to say, well, we can't say for sure. I think the safer route is, as soon as it appears there is, until you can prove there isn't, I think it's on you to not cause something to suffer.
I need to clarify my point a little bit, because I'm not using what I said as an excuse to not make sense, to say something isn't sentient. I was making my point to say that something might be sentient, and we don't recognize that sentience because it is not like a human sentience.
Sure.
And that's one of the things that I'm worried about, is that when we write off the rotifer, say, as just a non-sentient tiny creature, that we might be writing off with something that does have sentience. That's my big problem.
Yeah.
And that's a danger. But again, I go to pretend we're walking around on microscopic people that we can't see right now because we can't zoom in that far. But then we finally discover it, and then we'll develop shoes that don't allow us to step on those people. We can't base our lives on like what we might discover later. I feel like that's almost on the way of getting to solicism. Like I'm not so much concerned about not recognizing something and disregarding it as not sentient as I am as recognizing something as sentient and disregarding it as not sentient. Does that make sense?
I think so. And to Kelley, I totally see what you're saying, right? This is a criticism that I hear actually from people who are mostly arguing against the vegan point, right? Who say like, look, why are you choosing this other form of life? Plant life in particular, over other forms of life. It seems like you're just changing your priorities. And like the way that I've thought about this is, look, if I was eating babies right now, I think you would like human babies. Okay. Like that's what I eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I think you would agree with me that it's better for me to eat cows rather than babies if I had to choose the two.
You don't eat babies for breakfast?
I don't, contrary to popular belief.
I thought all atheists did. So
yeah, I know. I know. Yeah, but it's good that you clarified that point, Kelley. But I think most people agree, like, right, like that seems pretty intuitive. So like you can kind of go down this scale and you can kind of just say, well, I do think that insects are interesting. There's a lot of debate in the vegan community about insects, but point is, I do think like by and large, they don't have the same capacity as other mammal species, right? So like insects seem to don't have the same suffering as an average mammal, for example. So I think you can go down this kind of line and say, yeah, plants, we don't seem to recognize it. Now, again, Kelley, you could be right. They could have this complex chemical sort of reactions, which some people claim happen. I'm very skeptical on some of that, but there are some people that do claim happen with plant life. And I will agree with you that is a possibility. But here's what I know. I know a pig has a capacity to suffer, right? I don't speculate on that. I don't speculate on cows, for example. So that rules in my abstention of animal products, right? So like I think that's kind of a vegan ethos in particular, but veganism I think is also a result of sentientism. I think sentientism is the groundwork which informs the veganism. And I'm only bringing up veganism because like that, I think is directly what, I think that's what most people think about, honestly, when they talk about this conversation, is our relationship with how we eat animals. Cause like, that's a big deal. People do it every day. Right. So anyway, T, that's all the time we have for this call. But thank you so much for calling in. And I promise you, I didn't pay T off, okay, to call in. I only say that because last week on Talk Heathen, I also talked about veganism, and I always feel weird talking about it because, like, I don't know. I guess I'm the guy people, other vegans call, I guess now. I don't know what it is. And I don't know if T's a vegan either. I think, maybe he just identifies with that label. But anyway, Kelley, what'd you think? Because I thought that was a great discussion with you.
I think it's I think it's a very good topic to talk about. It really is
cutting edge.
And I don't want you to get the idea that I'm against sentientism either. I wanted to bring up some of the opposite sides.
No, those are legitimate criticisms that I think get brought up in this conversation. I think I'm glad we got to talk about it. I get happy talking about it because, again, it's something I'm interested in, but it is a hobby horse topic for me, right? Anyway, hopefully we get to talk about rocks or something, Kelley. We got to.
When he mentioned banging rocks together, and we find out they're sentient in the future, I'm thinking, oh, geez, I got.
Oh yeah, you got a rock shop.
I've been keeping captive over here,
dude. You're gonna be. Oh man, you're the seller. You're the seller. Oh my gosh. Yeah. If we had beliefs of animism, like if we still thought rocks and trees had life, like you would be the worst because you're selling them into. I don't know what you sell, slavery, I guess. I don't know.
I was just gonna say, I'd be.
Is it slavery? You're not really making the rock do anything. It can't really go anywhere anyway. I don't know.
Well, some people think they have power.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. I guess you're using its powers. I don't know. Interesting. We got Hell's Bells who donated $10. By the way, for the super chat. You can donate on the super chats, and we will read them if they don't break the terms of service of YouTube. And they say, "Can I get a happy birthday shout out? It's on Easter. Happy birthday, Hell's Bells."
Oh, I was going to say, no, you can't.
Oh,
but no. Hey, happy 25th birthday, Helen.
Happy 25th birthday, Helen. Oh, Kelley. Hit him with the 25th birthday, huh? Yeah, man. Well, folks, this is Truth Wanted. If you like what you're seeing here so far, I already mentioned a couple different ways you can support the show, but one of them is by buying some of our merchandise, which I'm going to show you on the screen here in just a second. We do have a merch store, and we do have a monthly t-shirt that we're doing this month. It's somebody being abducted by aliens, and it reads Truth Wanted, always keep on the truth. Of course, all of our merchandise can be found on the store and also the other ACA merch. So check that out at tiny.cc/merch-ACA. And if you're like me and you like to listen to your shows and not necessarily watch them, you can hear audio-only versions of all the shows if you go to tiny.cc/AEN podcasts for the latest ACA shows. So that's a fun thing that you should know about. And with that, I think we should go on to our next one. I think we have, who do we want to take here? Oh my goodness. This is, I'm going to talk to Todd, who's calling in from Florida first. Let's go ahead and talk to Todd. Todd, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hi there, Dan, Kelley. I'm doing the show tonight. I think it would be good to have every Truth Wanted show start with kind of a deep dive into some topics like that. I like that format, and then follow it up with the calls. That'd be really cool.
Yeah. I've toyed with that idea. The problem is if I have guests on, I want to talk about the guests too. I don't want to just introduce somebody and people be like, who was that guy? You know what I mean? So I get away with it with Kelley because the audience is familiar with Kelley. Kelley's been on here before.
Yeah, but, I've been around.
Something I've played with, but some people have said maybe it should be its own show entirely, and maybe I don't know, maybe that's an idea. Maybe a patron exclusive thing too. I don't know. We talk a lot about patron exclusives and we never do them, so I don't know. Maybe, but I appreciate that input, Todd. So what do you got for us today?
All right, let me jump right into the topic that I called about. It's a fun topic since this is Easter weekend and all.
Yeah, but, that's right. It's Good Friday today. I didn't even point that out. It's Good Friday today. You think Jesus gets mad that they call it Good Friday? Like, if you said the day I died was a good day, I feel like I'd be offended. But anyway, I mean, I know it's good for people broadly speaking, but regardless. Anyway, Todd, that's a stupid atheist joke. Continue.
I would like to cite evidence in Christian doctrine to support the thesis that Jesus cannot be the Redeemer of Christians, but the actual Redeemer and the one who atones for the sins of Christians is, in fact, Satan.
Interesting.
That is my thesis.
Well,
So,
that is a thesis that might get you kicked out of some Christian schools, but here at the University of Truth Wanted, we will accept it. I'm ready.
We will start with why Jesus cannot be the atoning sacrifice.
Okay.
So one of the conditions of being the atoning sacrifice is that you must be without sin. To be able to be without sin, you must be capable of making the choice between sinning and not sinning. But since in the year of 325 AD, a group of Christian clerics got together and voted that Jesus is God, along with the Father is God and the Holy Spirit is God. They are one thing. If Jesus is God and sinning is disobeying the will of God, Jesus cannot sin. He cannot have the choice to sin. So therefore, he is invalid as a sinless entity.
Yeah, it's kind of like saying, you know how people say like, oh, atheists, if you use a lack of belief as the definition of atheism, then rocks can be atheists. And some people point that out as a criticism. Personally, I don't care. Maybe rocks can be. That doesn't actually matter to me. I get it because it's describing a psychological state. But this is like kind of the same thing, right, Kelly? Because it's like if a rock can't sin, it can't be a good redeemer. So if Jesus can't sin, then he can't really be a good redeemer. I guess the question is, could he have sinned? I don't know that you could. I guess it depends on what sin is.
There were
to violate your own will, but as soon as you choose to do something, that has become your will. So you cannot really choose to do something that you don't choose to do.
Yeah.
There are some ancient written instances of Jesus committing sins when he was a child, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Apocrypha stuff.
Yeah, right. You know? I mean, I know it's not accepted by the church, but I mean, it is still writings that came out around the same time as the biblical writings. So
it is weird because if sin is just interrupt you here, Todd, because if sin is, as you're pointing out, right, is the going against the will of God. Like if that's how you define sin, then you're right. You can't really go against your own will if you don't have that capacity. But here's the thing, though. Here's how I'll challenge you on this, Todd. What was the whole point of Jesus in the desert? Because the whole point of Jesus in the desert was that he was to be tempted. Because like if he was tempted, was he not ever actually tempted at all? Like did he not have a choice in that matter? I mean, like I don't know. What do you think?
So this is the problem. Is that when you read those passages, it sounds like Jesus and the Father God, it sounds like they're two different people. It's like when Jesus is in Gethsemane and begging, let this cup pass from me, but if it be thy will. So he's almost acting as if he is not the same as the Father. But since this group of mostly Greek clerics voted that way in 325 AD, we just have to accept that. But we can move on to point 2, which is the punishment for sin is to be permanently separated from the presence of God and to spend eternity in hell torment.
You're right. Well, at least the separation from God. That's
So-
what most denominations would agree on. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So for Jesus to atone for the sins, to be the Redeemer, to exchange a sacrifice of himself in place of all the sins of mankind, Jesus would need to have the punishment of those sins, which is to be cast into eternal hellfire.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
Now,
Can he even do that?
We
Yeah.
know that it is the fate of Satan to be cast into eternal hellfire.
According to the book of
So-
Revelation. Yes.
So Satan will have the punishment of all sin. So the only question is, did Satan lead a sinless existence?
Well, he did go against the will of God.
Yeah, right. That's my first thought too.
Yeah.
I submit to you that Satan is the creation of God, since God is the creator of all things, according
Sure.
to Christian doctrine.
Sure.
So if God chose to create Satan and then chose to place Satan into the garden to tempt Adam and Eve, God being omnipotent and all-knowing, all-loving, he would foresee this, and it is his intention that these things happen, or
Yeah.
will.
Yeah. So this is kind of the problem with free will and stuff, right? And like the problem of omniscience.
Satan is following the will of the creator God who created Satan,
Yeah.
and Satan is tempting people to sin because God needs the people to be in a state of sin where they need an atoning sacrifice to take care of their sin. Satan's existence and everything that Satan does is the will of God. Therefore,
Yeah. Okay.
Satan is sinless and
Are
is
you-
the atoning redeemer of all Christianity. Now, that doesn't mean he should be worshipped. So calm down, Christians. It's okay. You're supposed to worship Christ. You're supposed to believe in Jesus, all that stuff. That's fine. But just don't kid yourself. Jesus did not atone for you.
Kelley has the biggest face of doubt I think I've ever seen Kelley have before on this show. Kelley, you're skeptical.
Yeah, I'm kind of confused about why this matters to us.
Yeah, Kelly's like, what's the point? No, because
Yeah,
Todd, I think you're an
you know,
atheist, right? You're kind of telling this sort of in jest.
Is that the point, that you're trying to show that Christianity is based on false principles, or?
This, I feel like this is a good example of sort of the mode of like a sermon takes these imaginary, fantastic, mythological things and talks about them, and often someone doing a sermon will take this almost Socratic approach to asking these questions and then giving the answer in the next verse and sort of enlightening the people to say, you know, here's this Bible. We know it's big and long and confusing and often contradictory, but let me just explain it to you in a way you'll understand, and then you can go home and be happy. And so I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm laying out these ideas, these principles, building on top of each other, forming a logical argument. And I think my argument is just as reasonable, is just as rational as any deeply held Christian faith.
Yeah. And you know what, Todd? On that note, I would agree with you.
Yeah,
And of
I would
course-
agree with that.
Of course, I know you make these points to point out the fallaciousness of some of these arguments, right? You can kind of do this for other kinds of religious beliefs. But yeah, if you kind of bring up these sort of imaginary qualities that we've given to God about his omniscience or his interaction with us in terms of free will, stuff like that, right? Like, yeah, you come into these sort of logical, weird conclusions that you can come to. Yeah, this kind of exercise, I think, is useful for pointing out sort of, again, the silliness of some of these conclusions. I would be curious to see what would a Christian would respond to that, if anything, if you even could. But I don't know. I'm not a Christian anymore, so I couldn't tell you what I would say to that.
I have a feeling that most of the Christians I know would not accept it.
Yeah, right. I mean, you're kind of bound to not accept it. You kind of have yeah. Go ahead.
I'm not the only one who's considered it. There, if you a quick Google search, you will find the Christian apologist explanations for this.
Interesting.
Include such things as people don't have to stay in hell for the sins that they committed. They choose to remain in hell because they keep sinning. They won't ever believe in God no matter what. So Jesus didn't have to be in hell eternally. He just had to flash to hell, and then since he does not reject Christianity and beliefs, he's back, and he's done the atonement. So that's their explanation.
Interesting.
I don't think it's a good one.
Yeah.
There's others that say that death is really the wages of sin are death. It's not eternal hell, but death is an endless something. They redefine death and hell and so forth. Again, it's just it becomes word salad.
It goes around and around and around and around. Yeah, no real conclusion.
I don't really have a good argument, but look over there.
Sure. Yeah, no, I definitely heard versions of this in the past, Todd. This was kind of interesting bringing up. You brought up some stuff I hadn't really thought about before, like the the free will situation, and also like I've heard Jesus not being a very good atoner for sin because he didn't stay dead. But I kind of like the idea of Satan was following the will of God, and that actually makes him a redeemer. That makes him sinless in a way. Because he did exactly what God wanted him to do. I guess the question is, did he do what God wanted him to do or not? I don't know how Christians, again, would answer some of that. But yeah, thanks for sharing that with us, Todd. I'll go ahead and let you go now so we can talk to some other folks. But good, I don't know.
Interesting
sermon.
idea.
We got a satanic sermon is what I would describe that as.
Yeah, it was an interesting idea. I'll give him that.
Yeah, satanic sermon is what I'm going to end it on. Folks, before we get to the next call, just to let you know, you should come down to the library. Did you know this show used to be in person all the time? Now we do it some of the time, but I am going to be in the library April 30th, so in a few weeks here, and we will be broadcasting live. Of course, you can join me and our new special guest, Blind Limey, who was one of the folks who showed up on audition day. So we're very excited to introduce him to the world. And also Atheist Experience will be hosted by Jim Barrows and Christy Powell later that day. Doors open at noon and it's totally free. So you should come down if you're around Austin, or if you're coming by, just come say hi. I'll be there and should be pretty fun. Kelly's been there. Kelly, what do you think? What would you rate the ACA library on a scale of 1 to 10?
10.
10?
I had a blast.
Good.
I got to hang out for SecX.
Yeah.
Really hard. That's hard for me to say.
Yeah.
And then all the way through Sunday. So I got to see all 4 shows live, and I just had a blast. And everybody was so great to me and nice to me. I don't know why anybody wouldn't go and hang out for the Sunday.
Yeah. Sunday shows, baby. Come hang out and see what's going on. You can also email this show if you like this one in particular. Tell me what you like, what you didn't like, and tell the folks behind the scenes thank you for the work they've done. You can go to truth@atheist-community.org for that. I do read most of the stuff that comes through me. I got some pictures this last week of someone who said that they might have saw a UFO but I'm pretty sure it was just Venus, and they admitted too. This is probably just Venus in the sky. But I do get that. Those kind of emails are the best because it's like you thought I'm an important enough person for you to send me your personal UFO pictures, and I like that. I like that I've established myself in that position for you. So it's just really funny. But yeah, thank you to everybody who emails me. And of course, if you want to email all the shows or just reach out to the ACA in general, you can go to tv@atheist-community.org and see what's going on our website at atheist-community.org. And last but not least, before I move on, there's a Facebook group run by fans for fans. You can go to tiny.cc/FBTWG, interact with folks there. And why not? Why not go post? Why not go see what's going on there? I like to see all the posts and stuff going on. I think people are really nice in that community. If you have a belief that is kind of different from other people's and you want to see other people's responses, that Facebook group, I think, is a good place to have a discussion like that. Some nice folks on there. But with that, I think we should take at least one more caller. We'll see if we have time for another. I'm not sure, but we'll take at least one more here. We're going to talk to Brandt, who is calling in from Wisconsin. Brandt, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Howdy. I was looking to ask y'all if you've ever heard about Philippe Mainlander and his ideas on pandeism.
No, I know very outside information about pantheism and pandeism. I know there's some more technical terminology when you explore some of the inner depths of what those beliefs might mean, but I really know like basic, like Wikipedia sized information. I'm not super in depth with it.
Yeah, I'm right with you. So.
Neither am I. I was just wondering if you all are familiar with Philippe Mainlander's idea that the universe essentially is God's corpse.
Oh no! Wait, that kind of sounds familiar. Was he the philosopher guy that ended up ending his own life later and stuff? Or is that like a different guy?
He hung himself on a stack of his own books, and later his sister, who took up writing the second half of his book, Philosophy of Redemption, and doing similar to herself. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Maybe I have heard of this a bit more. Okay, so here's a fun side thing. You guys know the guy who made Dilbert? That guy, Scott Adams. That's his name, right? Scott Adams. Okay, first of all, he's a bigot and he's stupid. His Twitter is garbage. But I read a book of his when I was in high school, believe it or not. He wrote this book called, I think it's called God's Debris is the name of the book. I enjoyed it for what it was. Really weird reading that book and seeing how the person he turned up being. I'll just say it, he's a garbage human being. He's got bad takes on everything. But he had this. I don't know if he copied the philosopher we're talking about's ideas, but it was a similar concept. Basically, the whole premise is God tried to figure out the only thing that he couldn't do, which was end himself. Basically, right? When you're God, you kind of do everything. What can you not do? What are your limits? And he figured out, well, it's to not be God, right? It's to end himself. And the result of who we are today and the Big Bang and everything is God sort of literally like exploding is kind of like the metaphor that's going on there. And I read that book and I found the name of the person you're talking about later, Brandt. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if Scott Adams just totally ripped this guy off. Which knowing Scott Adams would
probably
make
did.
Sense. Yeah, but
they're fairly similar to each other. I know Philippe Mainlander's idea was a little bit closer to the idea that like God is a perfect being, and a perfect being would have no motivation to take any action whatsoever. And so basically, the only action that God could take would be one that would be not something contained within its own being, which would be non-existent. And hence it was like inclined to do the one thing it could do, which would be become non-existent rather being just like sing in its own perfection.
Yes. That is it. Okay. Yeah. I guess I did know more about this person than I thought. You had to kind of key me a little bit, but yeah, this all is ringing a bell. Yeah. Very obviously weird esoteric ideas about God that obviously most Christians wouldn't subscribe to. But again, it's kind of using that logic that that we just got with our last call, right? It's like if you take certain qualities described by God, particularly in the Bible, right? And you come to some of these conclusions, you can come to some really interesting places. And this is kind of one of them. Kelley, what do you think about this? Because it's obviously kind of weird, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can come to a lot of different places by thinking, right? I'm not sure that.
Yeah.
This is like one of those things that, it's a cool idea, right?
Yeah.
But I can't say I can't say it's true. I can't say it's not true.
Kelly's like, cool story, bro.
Yeah, right.
So
but
what?
But it puts us back in the same position where
very similar.
My point is it just puts us back into the same situation when we're having to believe in a God, whether he's dead or not.
Sure. I don't think Brandt literally believe. I'd be surprised if Brandt literally believe. Maybe you do. Is this an idea you personally subscribe to, or is it just something you find that's interesting?
Yeah.
I lean 60% into agnostic atheism and 40% into pandeism, but it's mainly out of fear, just because there's a thing called generic subjective continuity for which kind of spooks me a little bit when it comes to the whole atheist experience, because I don't want to get reincarnated. I'm a negative utilitarian. I believe that what matters is experience and suffering, essentially, from experiencing beings. So if things are getting reincarnated in the future, that would really, really suck. So for me, it's kind of like one of the hopeful, just things. But I don't really believe in it truly, but it's like one of those things I'm inclined to believe in.
Can we explore this for just a second, Brandt? So there's a hypothetical sort of karmatic system that it's almost like Pascal's wager. It's like you want to be on the good side of history, basically, so that when you reincarnate, you could potentially, prosper off of your works done in this life. But what if the system works differently from what we think? What if the system encourages us to do as many bad things as we want? And the more worse things we do, we actually get a better station in life in the next one. Is there a way for us to know the difference?
Well, I don't believe in karma. I believe generic subjective continuity wouldn't have anything to do with reincarnation in the sense of a Buddhist.
Okay.
It would just mean the physical universe would essentially collapse and then restart, and all the atoms would essentially be trapped. And inevitably, at some point, conscious life would spring up, and due to it being essentially sentient and it being able to feel pain, its value is just as important as my own, because I'm a being that can feel pain as well.
Okay. Very interesting. This is a very interesting idea. I need to write this down so I can look more into it. But I think my question still applies, which is, again, what if the system turns out where, I don't know, it actually benefits us if we do harm, right? Is there a way for us to tell the difference?
To me, that would be really weird. I mean, to me, I guess a really odd thing that a lot of people believe in that I don't believe in is that morality and what's good and ought to be done comes from God. God essentially defines good. I disagree with that majorly. Even if God is an existing being currently out there, and God were to be I think X, Y, Z is good or bad, I think it's completely irrelevant what God thinks.
Sure.
Because the value is generated from experience with beings, and our pain matters. So basically, even if God was pain is good, and it's actually a good thing for you guys to cause as much pain as possible, I would be well, that's great for your opinion, God, but, it still sucks to suffer. So, objectively speaking, it's bad to cause suffering. That would be basically my opinion. So, when it comes to karma, it would be odd if somehow causing pain would guarantee reduced pain. Then yes, as a conscious sequentialist, I would say we ought to cause pain, because somehow magically that would cause less pain to occur in the universe. Yeah. But outside of that, no, I don't think it would make much sense, to cause pain to reduce pain. So a weird hypothetical analogy.
Well, I asked my question, Kelley. You're ready to go.
Yeah, I've had all kinds of ideas here. I'm thinking about what other people would think of the idea. One of the things is that some people think causing pain is a pathway to enlightenment, right? Look at the flagellists from the medieval times, right, or the stylists. So I'm not sure that that's a valid point. And you said what you thought that what God thought was irrelevant to the way the world works. And I was thinking, I think that it's what people think about God is irrelevant to the way the world works. So I think I have a much simpler version of reality than most people do. I think we come, we go, that's it. It's just this continuous cycle of life that really has no meaning. I know it's kind of nihilistic to think that way, but from my experiences, I don't know that anything is any more important than any other thing that happens on the earth, and or that any one living thing is more important than any other living thing on the earth. So I have a whole problem with the concept of picking and choosing how we believe in a God, when I don't think that the whole God concept really has any bearing. So I'm really confused by the whole thing. Like, even if we are living on the body of a dead God, how does that affect us on a day-to-day basis?
It wouldn't really affect us on a day-to-day basis. It would just affect the fact that, like, I guess you would be not reincarnated, which is a good thing. But I guess there are some implications to Philippe Mainlander's ideology, because he believed that one of the reasons God likely committed this act of like divine suicide was because you have to think of God as more of like a singularity of like multiversal possibilities, and it realized that like pain was like far more present in like all the universe and like had way more value. And so the reason God decided to, instead of just maintaining this state of like being its own perfection, decide to instead like transition to non-existence is because of like pain being objectively not worth experiencing. So basically the only reason that would have like any value to like our existence to like recognize this would just be to recognize that like this God is like aligning with negative utilitarian and negative consequentialist values essentially. And that like it's not necessarily against any like religious sense, but because
in other words, like a natural point of reference. So. Sorry to interrupt you, Brandt, but kind of like a natural point of reference. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I finally was able to Google Philippe Mainlander. There's a little umlaut. I think that's what that is. Is that an umlaut? I don't know German.
I believe it is.
There's a thing in there, a weird thingy in there that I don't speak, but it's there. So I finally found it here. I'll have to read up more on this later. Yeah, Death of God. Yep, I've seen this guy before, but I've never done a deep dive. So
his book is going to be translated, I think, this June. It's coming out in English. But if you speak Spanish, or German, it's obviously in those translations as well. But
like, currently, ¿Dónde está la biblioteca, my friend? So. Anyway,
I'm sorry, I don't speak very good Spanish at all.
I just asked, where is the library? I didn't actually mean that there's nothing. I took 2 years of Spanish in high school, and that's the extent.
That's what you remember?
Yeah, pretty much. And I can maybe order off the menu at a Taco Bell reasonably well, but that's probably.
And the only thing I know in German is Ich bin Berliner.
Library or bookstore. I didn't know it was one of those two.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Brandt, this is a man. I tell you, you never know what you get with this show, and that's what I love about it. Because now you gave me something I got to Google tonight. This is really weird. This is some new stuff. I got to figure out. Brandt, thanks for sharing that, bringing that to the table. I'm going to go ahead and let you go. I hope you call in next time, and maybe we can talk some more about it, and so I can give you some more informed thoughts. Because again, like everything I know is just vague recollections of. And also Scott Adams trivia. So like, not super helpful in this conversation. But hey, Kelley, I think that's all the time that we got for this episode. We're going to wrap things up. Kelley, you usually ask where people can find you, but where can people find you, Kelley? They should know. You
can find me on the nonprofits.
Yeah. Go watch the nonprofits, guys.
You can also find me on Skeptic Hangout, which we just finished. We just released our 3rd episode of this season. And you can also find me on the Fan Run Discord, where I'm a moderator and I host a few features over there.
Yes. And we aren't doing an after show today, but we sometimes do after shows over there. So if you're watching live, you should go check it out.
I'm going to do an after show.
Kelley's going to be there. I'm not going to be able to join him tonight. But Kelley's going to be there. So you can interrogate him and ask him all the embarrassing stories about what happened when we hung out together or something. No, I don't know. Whatever happens in Discord stays in Discord, right? That's usually.
I already told everybody I felt like a toddler standing next to you. So
I am a very tall man, but
and I'm a very small man. So
there was that dynamic, but no, it was a good time. I'm glad we finally got to hang out in person and do some of that. Real quickly, of course, I also need to thank the wonderful, fantastic, amazing, stupendous crew that helped make this show happen every single week. One of them is burning in hell right now. And the other one is like above a purple sort of oasis, some sort of mist. And the other one's a cat. So there's a lot going on with the crew as usual. Crew's doing their thing. Thanks so much, crew, for making that stuff happen. Remember, folks, we want the truth. I want to know your guys' thoughts on the best getting out of church lie. So please comment that below. Don't forget. Okay, I didn't. So do that, and I want to read your responses next week because I love them. They're great. Been really good implementing this segment so far.
Yeah, they've been fun.
Yeah, and of course, as always, as Link says below, support the Patreon, and you'll get a shout out. And let the ACA know, hey, Truth Wanted is a cool project, and you like it, and you want to see more of it. But I think
leave comments
and like and subscribe.
I try to respond to the comments all the time. So
yeah. I definitely, I don't respond to all of them, but I do look at pretty much all. Well, I look at a lot of them. Try to see what people say about stuff, and it's good. It's good for me. But always emails are always the best because emails people have very long, drawn out thoughts, and sometimes like, wow, you wrote so much, and my response is not going to be as well thought out. But I will give you my thoughts anyway. But anyway, we got to wrap things up, Kelley. I'm Objectively Dan. You're Kelley Laughlin. This has been another great episode of Truth Wanted. Remember to always keep wanting the truth, and I'll see you next time.
Watch The Non-Prophets and join the hosts in the live chat, Sundays at 3 p.m. Central, between the Atheist Experience and Talk Hidden. Visit tiny.cc/YTNP.